Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Marcus here again. We as a nation are going through some trying times right now. We as a people are going through some trying times right now. Our humanity is lacking much. We as Americans are in a position um, preparing ourselves for what we call the midterms. Midterms is where we get a chance to have a new election process take place, where you get a chance to, as a people, speak to your Congress about whether you want them to stay on the track that they're on, or maybe you want to change for some different people because of different ideas, whatever the case may be, stand the same or change. And we as a nation of people have recognized that we've had this going on for quite some time, and we have to keep changing. And it doesn't really matter what changes are made, the situation still basically one way or another remain the same. And that means you got some people having a wonderful life, and you got some people barely making it through, and you got some people that's going through some trying times. And the concern is, we always say, is that we want to make sure that everybody is having a good life. And that's arguable because that's never happened in my lifetime, and I haven't even seen anybody dedicated to trying to see that it stopped. Not only that, I haven't experienced or felt that the people in general were concerned about whether everybody was having a good time. Things were so messed up, they're just trying to make sure that they weren't one of the ones that were not having a good time. And for some strange reason, the conversation always ends in such a way that those at the bottom, or should I say the bottom, always there. And it always has a lot of people there. So I'm just thinking, ladies and gentlemen, I heard also this morning that the Democrats are not really satisfied with Joe Biden. They say that, I heard someone say that Joe Biden probably was just a choice at the time to deal with white men on white men. And that Joe Biden had a lot of experience that the other white man hadn't. And yet the other white man brought some stuff that most of us had read about, some of us had read about, and most of us didn't even know about, but got a chance to be indoctrinated all at the same time. And the Democrats are really now dealing with reality that Joe Biden really is not the man for the time that the people need. And definitely the other white man is something that many of the people don't want to have anything to do with. Republicans, for one reason or another, have accepted this other voice, and they're riding that horse really wild. Now, Democrats call that evil of the Republicans and that trend of thought. And at the same time, the Republicans call the Democrats evil at the same time. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to get enough people to support them so that they might be able to do what they say is the best thing to do. Well, on the Republican side, honestly, as a person of color, what I see in their program is that they are the group of people that are reminding us of people that were so evil and low down, whether they knew it or not. That was the result. They didn't see the result of that. They just saw the profit. Treating people, made them into slaves, beating them when they didn't respond like they expect their animals to respond. Raping their women and girls and boys and working them as much as they possibly could get out of them, then separating them, trading them off, and really actually tying a bold man who would stand up and talk like a Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X and tie one of his legs to a horse and the other leg to another horse and beat him and let the horse start running different directions and see what happened to the man. And this is supposed to deter anybody trying to be free. This is this is like taking the right for a woman to have control of her own body away from her, and then threatening that if she tries to do what she wants to do in violation of what they have told her to do, then they are willing to put a horse on each of her legs and rip her apart. Not literally, but basically that's what the message is. And this they want to give to the nation and say that we are white people. This is what the Republicans are saying as I see it. Or should I say this trend, we are white people. We are God's representatives on earth. And everybody else is to serve our purpose. And when they get out of line, depending upon how we feel about it, we can kill them. Just like we do any wild animal that we don't like. We just kill them. And in the meantime, we got our little puppies, we can treat them better than we treat these guys. We just want to make sure they survive. Don't get too happy with nothing, because then they want to rebel. Now, that's taking it to, some might say, an extreme. But for every poor person that's down there eating out of a dumpster, sleeping in a tent if they got one, or between a building, that's how they feel. How you know, Marcus? Because I've been there. That's how I know. I've been there, and that's how I know. Okay, that's not all white people are like that, Republicans. No, not all white people, Republicans are like that. But let me ask you this. Those that are not like that, are they preventing what's happening? I'm sure the answer is no. Or what about all the white people in the world, all the white people in America? Their concern and compassion for what is proper, is it stopping this condition that people have to experience every day? Ask yourselves, and the answer will be no. And some might say, but it keeps it from getting worse. What do you mean, keep it from getting worse? Are you trying to say that $15 an hour is better than $6 an hour? When at the same time the prices jumped up so high to the value of $15 an hour is the same as $6 an hour. But anyway, those are the kind of games that are being played on people who allow it to happen. And people who allow it to happen have two reasons. Either they don't know it, they are afraid, fear of what will happen to them if they stood up. And I want to say, or they're partners to it, they're benefiting with it. And you can add that if you want to. Now, this I just told you about white people and Republicans. Now let's go back on the Democratic side. All of the white Democrats who might be having compassion for black people and people of color, is that sufficient enough to stop what's happening? Somebody say no, but if we don't get the Democratic Party in office again, what the Republicans are trying to do will be easier to done. And I will say to you, that is true. But at the same time, whatever you offer is still maintaining the system and all of its abuses. But I don't want to stop with you. I want to talk about black people too. Black people, you've had the right to vote. You've had the right to speak up, to make your voice known. And as long as you've been able to vote, as long as you've known what's going on, whether you cared or not, were you able to prevent the kinds of things that's happening in this nation, as I just got through explaining? And you would have to say, no, I don't care how much you were against it, you weren't able to stop it. So what I'm basically saying is, through the political process, it doesn't really matter whether you are black or whether you are white. It doesn't really matter whether you are a Republican or whether you are a Democrat. In America, according to the politics, according to the system of guidance by laws that we have established as a nation of people, there's going to be suffering. There's going to be suffering. And the reason it's going to be suffering is because the system is designed in such a way that it does. Let me give you an example. The system is so designed that right now, Donald Trump is actually perpetuating cancer all over this nation. What he has done, what he has violated, any other man, I believe, well, I ain't gonna say any other man ain't got no money. Would have been in jail so long, wouldn't have meant nothing. And he wouldn't have been able to have any effect on anyone on the outside. But because of the way the system is designed, Donald Trump, for whatever he represents, which is white supremacy, is able to be maintained right out here in the system. It's not fair and just according to the way other people are treated, but it is the way it is set up. This is the system. And in the meantime, a system being set up like this allows for Donald Trump to keep spreading his cancers every day and every night. It's a constant on every news station. It doesn't matter whether they're supporting him or against him. That's what they're constantly talking about. How many times have you heard anyone, any of these nations, or any of these stations, or any of these people talk about constantly peace and prosperity for every citizen, freedom and joy for every citizen, their dreams being fulfilled for every citizen, assuring and guaranteeing that they'll never have to worry about food, clothing, shelter, education, and health care while they are here in America. And the method is using the resources that have been given to us by divine power for those that would benefit, engage themselves in the process of creating the food, the clothing, the shelter, the education, the transportation, and all of those things that's important to them. By engaging themselves, being a part of the process, they become part owners of all the things that exist by the hands of man. And you don't need money, you don't need debt, you don't need loans, you don't need nobody cheating you and robbing you and becoming the richest people on the face of the earth and laughing at you and putting you down and getting and just taking away every right you got. Let me ask you something. Republicans and Democrats, why aren't either of you advocating something like that? You Republicans, are you against the freedom and the life of people to experience the same life that you want to experience? Democrats, are you against that same thing, that people can have the right and liberty and actually experience the kind of life that they dream? You got a problem with that? It appears that the Republicans and the Democrats got a problem with that. Or they don't either know about it, or they are in fear that if they did something about it, something worse would happen to them. Which is it? Well, I tell you, don't answer that. But let me ask you something. We're talking about the midterms. And you got all kinds of stuff talking. Like I told you earlier, you got one devil calling the other devil. And if the devils are talking, all you getting is a bunch of hellish mess. So I'm asking you, I've just given you another point of view. Why don't you consider that? And let's see what Republicans, what Democrats would come up with visions and ambitions that would address these kind of concerns, where black men and white men, women and children, old and young, can be excited about life every day. Let me ask you, let me see, tell me somebody, and you on the news media, those guys of you who got these talk shows and stuff, why don't you start advocating? Why don't you start asking about this? You sitting there trying to act like you so mad about what's going on. And all you are championing every day and every night is the same old kind of stuff that you say you hate. Now, this stuff here you would say you care about. Let me see you talk about it. Let me turn my TV on and hear somebody talking about the things that we just got to expressing. Let me turn on the social media and see all of this conversation talking about a new life, talking about a brand new world that you and I are engaged in, because now we recognize the responsibility that we have and the rewards that will come to us for doing what we do. Let me hear you start talking about that. Let me hear you start sharing it and talking to people out in the streets, talking to people everywhere, taking polls and see who really is concerned about these kind of things. Start telling us about that. I'm tired of this junk you're telling about every day, pushing down our damn throats, thinking you smart. We know what you're doing. You are not saying a damn thing about freedom. Why? Because you're against freedom. I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats. And I'm talking about whites and blacks. And who am I speaking for? I'm speaking for what's right. I know what's right, and I'm telling you about it. And you ought to do something about it because you've been acting so wrong most of your life. Well, I want to thank you so very much for giving me this your time. Eddie Marcus once again saying goodbye.